The Republican-controlled North Carolina Supreme Court has just issued a ruling striking down a previous court's ruling that made partisan gerrymandering illegal. This was the Republican court reversing its own past ruling when the court was previously democratically controlled. And so now, the Republican-controlled state legislature is free to scrap the court-ordered district boundaries that were used in previous elections, including the one last November, and draw new maps that are gerrymandered in Republicans' favor even more for 2024. The court also handed down 2 more rulings overturning decisions that had reined in the legislature's ability to restrict voting rights, putting on full display that the gerrymandering is only part of their broader, full-scale effort to entrench their own majorities. This move to enable gerrymandering by the state court in North Carolina could wipe out 4 Democratic congressional seats, which would nearly double the Republicans' current razor-thin majority in the House. In other words, just like how Republican gerrymandering in Florida and Texas and the ruling of a right-wing court in New York handed the GOP control of the House this term, Republicans are now looking at North Carolina to keep them in power through these illegitimate means. Now, North Carolina's Supreme Court is elected, just like the Wisconsin Supreme Court, whose latest election received national attention after Democrats won control of the court with the victory of Janet Protasiewicz. And to that point, one of the Democratic justices on the North Carolina court called out Republican justices in her dissent, saying, "To be clear, this is not a situation in which a Democratic-controlled court preferred Democratic-leaning district and a Republican-controlled court now prefers Republican-leaning districts. Here, a Democratic-controlled court carried out its sworn duty to uphold the state constitution's guarantee of free elections, fair to all voters of both parties. This decision is now vacated by a Republican-controlled court seeking to ensure that extreme partisan gerrymanders favoring Republicans are established." And that is spot on. This is a perfect example of how both parties are not the same when it comes to issues like gerrymandering. When Democrats were in control of the North Carolina Supreme Court, they said that partisan gerrymandering by either party should be illegal. But when Republicans take control, they immediately move to rig the system for themselves. The asymmetry is yet again on full display. In fact, now that Wisconsin has a democratically controlled state Supreme Court, they're poised to rule that any gerrymandering, even by Democrats, should not be allowed, striking down Republicans' rigged maps in the states. Think about it this way. Democrats won 53% of the vote in the Wisconsin State Assembly elections in 2018. Republicans only won 44.6%, but Democrats only got 36 seats, while Republicans got 63 seats due to Republican gerrymandering. And in North Carolina, which is another crucial swing state that can decide the balance of power nationally, the gerrymandering works decidedly in the same way to benefit Republicans. Only because Republicans control the Supreme Court, unlike Wisconsin, they're able to actually get away with rigging the system. Here's what Justice-elect Janet Protasiewicz said about restoring democracy and fair maps when I asked her about this issue in a recent interview.
And so here's the situation. I think that if the court elects a new Supreme Court justice on April 4th, whose name might be Judge Janet, I would be certainly very, very open to revisiting the maps. I've got to be careful, what I say about, particular types of issues. Obviously, every decision has to be rooted in the law, and I have to be fair and impartial. But one of the main reasons I got into this race is because of the threat to our democracy, the utter threat that our very gerrymandered maps have, right, and people's ability to vote and have their vote counted. So, Wisconsin's a battleground state. We have very, very close statewide elections. Our Governor Evers, won re-election by about 3%. But we elected on that same ballot a Republican United States Senator. We elected a Democrat as an Attorney General. We elected a Republican for our state treasurer. So it tells you that we have these very, very close elections. We're a battleground state. But then you take a look at our legislature, and virtually 2/3 of the seats in both the House and the Senate are red. And you say to yourself, how can that possibly be fair? And then you look at the fact that we have 8 congressional seats. We have a delegation of 8. 6 of those seats are red and 2 are blue. So the numbers are askew. Our legislature doesn't get anything done. When you have these very, very non-competitive seats, it certainly engenders more and more partisanship. There's no need to work across the aisle. There's no need to compromise. So I would argue that what's happening with these gerrymandered seats is really a threat to our democracy.
And this is all part of a very clear pattern from Republicans. For example, Texas Republicans just introduced a bill to ban voting centers on college campuses. Why? Because young people don't vote for Republicans. Florida Republicans introduced a bill to literally ban the Democratic Party. And here's Marjorie Taylor Greene proposing taking away the voting rights of Democrats who moved to red states.
I don't think the left would ever stop. I don't think they'll ever stop trying to invade our states or our counties. So how do we stop them?
Well, I think that, red states could choose and how they allow people to vote in their states. For example, over the past couple of years, we've seen a mass exodus from California and New York, where we've seen people fleeing those leftist policies and moving to states like Florida, Georgia, Texas, states where they like the tax policies, they like the schools, they like the consequences of Republican and red policies. What I think would be something that some red states could propose is, well, okay, if Democrat voters choose to flee these blue states where they cannot tolerate the living conditions, they don't want their children taught these horrible things, and they really change their mind on the types of policies that they support, well, once they move to a red state, guess what? Maybe you don't get to vote for 5 years. You can live there, you can work there, but you don't get to bring your values that you basically created in the blue states you came from by voting for Democrat leaders and Democrat policies. But this would be up to red states to be able to choose to do something like that so that their red states don't get changed, which is what's happening, unfortunately, when Democrat voters leave their Democrat states and they take their Democrat votes with them. That would be something that these red states would have to really consider and choose to do. But I'm a big believer in freedom, Charlie, but I'm also a big believer in defending our ability to pursue life and liberty and happiness. And the left is completely destroying that for those of us on the right.
And it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene calling to take away the voting rights of voters who don't support Republicans. It's also a top Republican legal strategy. At the RNC donor retreat just a few weeks ago, a top Republican operative was caught on tape saying college students voting is a big problem and urging them to combat Gen Z's voting rights.
I think that we can fix a few things in North Carolina because I think we now have a legislature controlled by the Republicans. If we can persuade the new Republican member to vote with us. But these are statutory changes that we could get done in North Carolina to protect against any of this private money. Because I promise you, Stacey Abrams has been in North Carolina, and we need to make sure that money is not flowing into Mecklenburg, Durham, and Wake counties. So we need to be looking at what are these college campus locations in polling. What is this young people effort that they do? They basically put the polling place next to the student dorm, so they just have to roll out of bed, vote, and go back to bed. And we need to build strong election integrity task forces in those counties. Virginia, we have a great task force at every county in Virginia, and we have a great statewide coalition. The governor just signed a bill yesterday that does away with signatures on absentee ballot applications and ballots, and now it has to be the last 4 digits of the social security number and a birth year. And we need to make sure that there's transparency and people are watching and verifying. That makes Virginia back in play, frankly, to be able to have some authentication. And again, having first day in-person voting campaigns. Wisconsin is a big problem because of the polling locations on college campuses. There are 501c3s. Their goal for the Supreme Court race was to turn out 240,000 college students in that Supreme Court race. And we don't have anything like that, and we need to figure out how to do that and how to combat that. So, yes.
Yeah, if we do not control the State House as the governorship, aren't we just out of luck?
No, I don't think so. Because in the states where we can make changes in the law, like North Carolina, I hope that we will be able to plug some vulnerabilities there. But most of these it's just taking what, we're kind of stuck with the hold hand. And we'll see what happens in Virginia this fall. If the Republicans are able to hold the State House and reclaim the State Senate, then maybe it's possible to get rid of 45 days of early voting in Virginia. 45 days. Do you know how hard it is to have observers be able to watch for that long a period? I mean, there are several things that they can do. They can get rid of same-day registration, but they can't do that now because the Democrats still hold the state Senate. But I just remind everybody that having people involved, engaged, and overseeing all of that in 2021 in Virginia made all the difference. even though it was still controlled by Democrats in every office.
This is where we're at. Republicans are doubling down on their anti-democracy agenda to take away the voting rights and representation of anyone they don't like. And all of their other rights will follow. This is why voting matters. And it can't just be once every 4 years. It has to be in midterm years and off-year elections too. Because voting isn't a one-time thing that magically fixes all of our problems. It has to be routine participation to make the kind of change that we need to protect and expand voting rights, knowing full well that all the while, Republicans are working to take those same rights away. And what happened in North Carolina is a reminder of exactly that. Before you go, I need your help. I'm right on the cusp of hitting 2 million subscribers, so please help me grow this channel so the progressive media ecosystem grows by hitting the subscribe button right here on the screen. I also started a Spanish channel so we can finally start regaining some of that lost ground among Spanish speakers, so if you want to help support those efforts, you can hit that subscribe button. And finally, if you listen to podcasts and you want to support mine, you'll find a link to that on the screen as well. Thanks so much for watching.